Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. So over the years, we've had the opportunity to work with many clients on their intranet brands. And today, we're going to share some of the tips that we've learned about developing your internal brand, as well as a lot of great examples from our clients who've really done some amazing things. So we're going to start off by discussing what branding is and what the difference is between your external brand and your internal brand, and what that means and why. We're going to go on to talking about some exercises for determining what your internal brand is, and review 3 different ideas that you can use at your offices. Then we're going to go through a bunch of tips and examples that we've seen from our clients. And lastly, we're going to just look at our new image cropper tool, because that allows you to make great looking content on your internet. And of course, no matter how well designed your internet brand is, user-generated content is a huge component. And 1 second here. There we go. So let's start by defining brand. There's a lot of different definitions out there, and if you look at a lot of the old school style textbook definitions, they mostly talk about symbol, logo, colors. I prefer this definition by Seth Godin. So he's a pretty well-known blogger and author for marketing materials. And he says a brand is a set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships that, taken together, account for a consumer's decision to choose one product or service over another. I really like this definition because I think expectations, memories, stories, and relationships are really the content that we also have on our intranets, and that's what intranets are all about. So expectations like HR policies, sharing memories like having galleries of company events, sharing stories about customer wins, and really building relationships with other employees. So I think it does a great job of describing not only what your external brand is and that it's something deeper than logos and colors, but also talking about what your internal brand is. And Seth Godin also adds a really important point here, which is design is essential, but design is not brand. So brand is more than colors, meanings, and symbols. So another way of looking at it is looking at the 6 C's of the corporate identity mix. This comes from a marketing professor and an often cited author, John Ballmer. And he talks a lot about corporate identity and corporate branding and what that means and the complexities about it. So I want to draw your attention to the top 3 here, which are culture, which is what we feel we are. So what your employees think about the company. Character is what we really are, or what we indubitably are. And communication is what marketing often says we are. So depending on perception, those things can actually be different. And he also points out some of the deeper complexities, which are conceptualization, so thinking about your corporate reputation, covenant, which is thinking about your brand promise, and are you actually delivering on what your brand is promising, and constituencies, reminding you that there are other stakeholders involved as well, shareholders, board members, etc., who also need to be pleased with what your brand and your culture is. 7th C here could also be complicated. Just a reminder that there's a lot of relationships and perspectives that make up your brand, and it can be really complicated to deal with. So if you're like me, instead of reading a journal article, you might prefer things explained by meme. So this is branding explained through the what they think I do meme. So we have what our customers think we do. And I used here the famous Comcast picture of the technician sleeping while he's on hold to Comcast. What our employees think we do. And I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the movie Office Space, and did you get the memo? What marketing thinks we do. And I think as a marketer, I have to admit sometimes marketing thinks like Mission Impossible that the company does everything amazing and really sets unbelievable expectations. What executives think we do, which are really focused on the bottom line. So I used the Glenn Ross example here. And what we really do sometimes feels like we're stuck in meetings all day, like on The Office. So just a reminder, it's really all about different perspectives, and what our goal here with branding is to make sure these align as much as possible. And at the end of the day, that starts with employees. Employees are the representative and the face of your brand. And So I have a quote here, which is, "Your culture is your brand." And just so you know, it's not me just saying this. This comes from the CEO of Zappos, which is a brand that's known for its high levels of employee engagement. Illustrating the culture example and looking to internal culture and how that affects what your external brand is, let's take a look at Google. So most companies have really strict brand guidelines. They have books on how their logo needs to be treated, and there are rules against deviating from that. Google is a lot different, where they allow that kind of informal corporate culture, and they actually allow playful variations on their corporate logo, which started inside and has now become a part of their external brand, which you see, playful logo updates for different world events. And so I think it's a really neat example of when your internal brand, which is how your employees work together and the processes that align and empower employees, is demonstrated and brought to the outside world. So now that we understand what brand is and the importance of culture to your intranet brand, let's take a closer look into culture. Some companies are ahead of the game and already have a really clear idea of what their culture is. But for most of us, culture tends to be something which we generally understand and have a feeling for, but we don't actually talk about very often. So why is talking about culture so hard? The Canadian Marketing Association did a study on internal branding, and they found one of the biggest challenges is gaining consensus when it affects every silo within the company. So if you think HR, marketing, operations, customer service, and IT, they all need to agree on what culture stands for. And so starting to define that can be really challenging. So if you guys remember the movie Pulp Fiction, they use a briefcase as a plot device. And what I want to suggest to you today is that your new intranet project can also be used as a plot device. So in the movie, they carry the briefcase moves the plot along. You don't actually ever see what's inside the briefcase, but it forces action, and the characters that are interacting around it are more important than what's actually inside the briefcase. So this is called a MacGuffin, and your intranet can really work in the same way. So the intranet can be a device that moves this branding discussion forward inside your organization. And what you want to think about is, what does your intranet say about your organization? So is it out of date, disjointed, disorganized, or do you want it to be vibrant, helpful, and engaging? So that's the goal with starting a new intranet project. It's a great time to open up this conversation and start being able to work on your internal branding. An example of this, we had our client Bank of Tennessee merged with Carter County Bank, and a key function of their intranet was to bring the two organizations together. So they saw the intranet as a way of being able to do that during a merger. And they saw it, what they mentioned to us was that they really saw the intranet as a symbol of the way forward. So here's 3 different exercises that you can use in order to help have that internal branding discussion and get everybody on the same page. The first one is affinity diagramming. This is also called a KJ exercise. So while this sounds complicated, it really isn't. So KJs are just a brainstorming exercise that you use to do effective group decision making. It allows groups to come to a consensus quickly using qualitative data and opinions. So how you run a KJ exercise is pretty simple. First of all, get a whole bunch of sticky notes, and then you want to think about what it is that you're trying to uncover. So you want to have some focus questions before you get a group together in order to do brainstorming. And what your aim is to do is get participants to share their expectations, their memories, their stories, and their relationships. So some examples of focus questions that you could use for doing group brainstorming are, for example, you're trying to encourage a friend to apply for a job at your company. How would you describe what it's like working there? So that'll encourage everybody who's in your group brainstorming session to think about how they would describe it in a way that is more human maybe than what you would use for traditional marketing copy. Another example of a question that you could use is, remember a time when you were really proud of an accomplishment at work. What made the project a success? And that question I like because it allows you to focus it on the positive and avoid any kind of negative discussions that could happen, and make sure that you stay on track. So once you've determined what your focus questions are going to be, you want to select participants carefully for a group brainstorming exercise. It needs to be authentic, and you're going to feel like you want to select only, show off to your executives, and you want to really involve the senior leadership team. But it's important to remember that culture comes from within, and your employees who are your frontline employees need to believe in it as well. So make sure that you include people from the front lines. So you've picked your participants, you've got your focus questions. Now get everybody in the same room, ask the focus questions, and write everybody's ideas on a sticky. Silently, you're going to put the ideas up on a board, and participants are going to group like ideas together. Then what you do is when you examine the trends, you name the groups of ideas. This allows you to see major trends that everybody is thinking and feeling and gains that consensus quickly. You rank by priority, and then you analyze and streamline your results. We're going to have a blog post actually coming out about KJ exercises. We use them all the time here, and they are fantastic for this type of kind of stakeholder decision making. Idea number 2, it is recommended by James Robertson. He is the author of a book called Essential Intranets, and he's a pretty well-known consultant and speaker on intranets. If you guys don't have the book, I highly recommend it. So he recommends using something called product reaction cards. These were developed by Microsoft for desirability testing. And what they are, essentially, it's 118 different cards that have emotional reactions on them. And the idea is that your brand values should also be emotional reactions. So what you want to do is sit down and take your group of stakeholders and ask them to go from 118 cards and narrow it down to 6 to 8 cards that really just give that feeling of what your brand is and that emotional reaction of what your brand is. You'll notice these cards are available for free download from Microsoft. Just Google Microsoft product reaction cards. And you'll notice that a lot of them have some negative reactions as well. It includes pretty much every emotional reaction you can think of. So you may want to use it as an exercise to talk about if you have an old intranet, what your old intranet is like, and then you can determine an old state that you want to get away from and what your new state is for your brand as well. Idea number 3 is to create a value pod. So this comes from the Method method. It's a book by Eric Ryan. So he's a co-founder of Method, which they're the people that make environmentally friendly soap. I was really lucky to hear Eric do a presentation on company culture. And I was actually a little bit, I was not that excited for the presentation because he was the first person of the day and he was talking about soap, and I thought it was going to be a little bit uninteresting. He ended up being probably my favorite presenter at the conference that I was at. And what is really cool about Method is they're this little company. It's kind of the David and Goliath story where Method is up against Procter & Gamble, and they had to figure out as this tiny company how they could take on this giant. And the way they did it is really, they talk about 7 different obsessions their company has, and they name culture as being their number 1 obsession. So they decided to look at culture as not a thing that you talk about once in a boardroom, but as something that you have to incorporate into every day of your work. And it's an ongoing program. It's not just a one-time project. So what they did is they took ambassadors from each department and they put together a cross-organizational team that maintains culture and conducted interviews with employees and worked with the C-level. And they were able to distill it down to 5 values. So I'm going to share those with you as well because I think the way that they wrote them is really unique, it's compelling, and it's understandable. So Method's cultural values are keep Method weird. What would MacGyver do? And that's talking about them staying small and acting like a small company, even though now they're much bigger. Innovate, don't imitate. Collaborate, 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 which is a word we love here at ThoughtFarmer. And care like crazy. So whatever exercise you choose to do, remember that it's all about uncovering expectations, memories, stories, and relationships. That's the key to your internal brand. So talk to people, discover, find out, and ask. Now that you've articulated your brand values, we can actually start creating the brand. We've noticed clients who do this well start with their intranet name first and then work from there. So the most popular idea for naming your intranet is crowdsourcing a name. While it's the most popular, it also can be the most problematic because you don't want to end up with a name that doesn't really represent your brand and you're throwing it out into the ether and allowing people to choose a name for themselves. So the key to effective crowdsourcing is to clarify what the brand value and objectives are first with everyone so they know what we're trying to accomplish. We also recommend providing an incentive to make sure you get a lot of ideas. Oxfam, who we're going to talk about in just a minute, they offered a public recognition and a free T-shirt, so it doesn't need to be anything complicated. And I think they had, I think it was over 60 entries that they had. We have a blog post about it on our website as well, called "Crowdsourcing a Name for a New Social Intranet." And they got all of these entries. They sat down as a small committee and then they narrowed it down to a few entries that they thought best represented their internal brand values and allowed employees to vote on those. So they controlled the crowdsourcing in a way that they were able to direct it towards where they wanted. And they came up with the name Padare, which is interesting. It means community space in the Zimbabwean language of Shona. And they wanted, for them, it was important with their brand to choose a name that wasn't only English and that was available because they're a global organization that made everybody feel included, and even for people that were in far off regions, that they still felt like they were a part of it. And I think something that means community space is perfect for that. They thought that after their naming contest, it really set the tone for the new intranet, and it symbolized the empowerment the new social intranet would provide to employees. So another example we saw, Cummins, Oxfam fortunately was able to run the naming contest in their old intranet and then launch with the new name. Cummins didn't actually have a name yet, but they wanted to launch their intranet anyways. So what they did is they launched their intranet and they just put up any brand they called it Name Me, and then they created a contest on there. The first thing was to name the intranet. So that works as well if you don't have an old intranet to use and you haven't thought out a name. It's okay to go ahead and launch, and you can use your new intranet as a tool to actually crowdsource. So the next example is from ACCA. They're the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. And they had an idea where they wanted to give a nod to their company history. So their intranet brand is named after Arthur Priddle. He's the founder of ACCA and founded in 1904. And they really created Arthur as a persona on the intranet. So they made him an intranet user. You notice, you can see up at the top there, he has a kind of a cute little animated cartoon drawing. And then they have several different individuals who can access the Arthur's account, and he actually posts to the intranet. So if you're stuck for ideas on naming your intranet, a really good idea is to look at your company history, because that usually gives you an idea of where you're from. We also did this. This is our own intranet here. And our parent company started in 1995, and they had their first server was named Sparky. So we took Sparky and turned it into a fun little robot character. And it's okay. I just wanted to mention here too, it's okay to deviate from what your external brand is, and it's okay to have a little bit more fun. So you don't want to go whole 180 degrees, but maybe go 45 or 90 degrees from what your company brand is. And I mean, it's for employees. You want them to feel like it's a little bit of a kind of inside special culture. So don't be scared to deviate a little bit away from what you guys are aware what the ThoughtFarmer brand looks like, obviously. So. Another example I wanted to share is from the US HIV Military Research Program. So they are a leader in international efforts to combat HIV, and this is an example of their public-facing website. So obviously this is a company with a very serious purpose, and you might expect them to have a very serious intranet. But we want to share this example because they did something that was unexpected, and they took a bit of a sense of humor with their employees. And they named their intranet Retronet and made a retro vibe to the branding, and you can see that carried throughout. So they named it Retronet because HIV is the retrovirus. So I think it was a way of kind of making something that could have been really serious and turning it around and making it bright and fun and interesting. Another example where people encouraged humor. This is also an example of an external website. We haven't, we don't have any screenshots yet because this is a relatively new client. But they're called Awesome Oil Sands. They're out of Alberta. And they named their intranet We Are Awesome, which is a play on We Are Awesome. So I thought that was fun. So encouraging humor is a great idea for naming. Another idea is to create a twist on what your corporate brand is. So if you want to be a little bit more corporate, and this can be called the corporate blue jeans approach too, is North American Power is a renewable retail energy supplier in Connecticut, and their initials are NAP, so they called their intranet Snap, which is just a fun little play on their initials. Another example of twisting the corporate brand is Pixel. So Pixel helps to design, build, and manage online video services for major media companies. And you can see their traditional logo is in the middle of the screen there, called Pixel, and it has the same colors that looks like a TV screen. But for their intranet brand, they called it Popsicle, and they turned it into little popsicles. So it's again a fun way that you can twist what your original brand is. This one's very on brand, but it's also fun and cute. One of the challenges that some companies have when naming their intranet is that they have multiple brands under their one corporate umbrella. So we work with Sharaf Retail out of Dubai, and I think they actually have something like 11 different brand names that are retail stores that fall under their overall global retail brand. So what Sharaf wanted to do was make the intranet look different, so for each employee that logged in, so they could recognize and feel included as part of their unique brand culture, and then also get news from the overall company. So they designed different branding for each different brand that they represented, and when it was actually based on employee ID. So when employees logged into the intranet, they would all different brands. So we thought that was a really interesting way of handling it. So this is not a ThoughtFarmer intranet, do not worry. This is an example of an old intranet at Penn State, and it was called My Outreach. So instead of totally overhauling what their name was, they wanted to build on that and expand on it. And they had an intranet, but they wanted to make it better. So their new brand name was called Our Outreach. And that explained that it was now a social intranet. Everybody could add content. It was collaborative. So I thought it was a great way that you could add on to what you had existing. So those are a bunch of examples for names. We also have a blog post on our website, 25 ideas for naming your intranet. It has a bunch of other examples. Now that you have your name, it is time to go and turn it into a brand. So this is the actual more literal stuff we talked about earlier, the symbols, the colors, the word mark. So how do you go forth and do that? We're going to show some really great examples. If you do not have an in-house designer, or if you're don't have any design skills yourself, and trust me, I understand, you can get help. So some people choose to use a third-party agency. We also have a design team here that you can use. And if you absolutely don't have any resources, start by looking at some really great examples of other intranets and get some ideas for what you want to do and work from there. The first example we have for great design comes from Bank of Tennessee. Their intranet, they also did a crowdsourcing contest to determine their intranet name, and they came up with Just Employee Talk, which can be shortened to JET. So once they had their name, they took it and ran with it. They made this is the login screen for their intranet. You can see that it looks like a boarding pass that you get for an airplane. Once you actually log into their intranet, you can see the theme of the airplane theme is taken throughout. So their news feed is called Arrivals. They have their social streaming called Check-in. You can see, I really love how they did the little employee pass up in the right-hand corner. Instead of just having your own little profile there, it actually looks like a pass that an airline employee would wear. You can see their company calendar is called Scheduled Flights, and they have crew birthdays, celebrating employee birthdays. So this is it's definitely one of the best examples we've seen of carrying your brand throughout all of your intranet. And even if you go onto some of their sub pages, you can see they designed it. Our company has the little luggage tags that are carried throughout, and they have their social page that has little passports. So great example of branding. Another example of committing to your intranet brand comes from Continuum. and they're a design firm. Their brand color is orange, so they called their intranet orange. And you can see they just tied in. It's a fun little feature, but they called their newsfeed Fresh Squeezed to keep with the theme. So look for little details that you can add like that, and that really brings the brand to life. And the next idea is actually about bringing your brand to life. So Central One has an intranet that they called Beacon. They again did a naming contest. They had 120 submissions and voted on them. So they ended up going with Beacon, and Beacon actually is a combination of BC, which is where Central One Credit Union is located, and Ontario, where they also have offices. So they felt this was a way of showing that it was bringing their two cultures together. And Beacon also, there's a play on words there where it's a symbolism for a guiding light. So what they did, once they determined their names, they actually created Beacon as a person, and you can see that that's actually a little nameplate that you would have on a desk. And they turned it into a persona and have different banners and name tags. And I'll show you, here's an example of all the different banners that they have that show Beacon, the person, for different seasons. I particularly love the Movember one and the ugly Christmas sweater Beacon version. So just to show you a couple other things of the way they incorporated Beacon throughout everywhere. And I think Central One has done probably one of the most phenomenal jobs of an intranet launch that we've ever seen. So they also did physical branding. So things like posters, acknowledging what the brand is. So Beacon takes you where you want to go. I love the clock that they did. Beacon knows when it's happening. They had some snacks that they offered for launch and did a stair wrap as well. And I really like these two cushions that say Beacon's got your back. So I think it's a great idea to bring your brand to life, turning it into a person. And then also, how can you bring that offline and how can you really carry that brand idea throughout? So this goes really well in tandem with creating your intranet brand, but it's important to help employees understand what the brand is meant to signify and to create buy-in with them. So now that it's time to communicate your brand, it's best to communicate this along with your intranet launch. And you can involve executives and employee ambassadors to explain the message and to add credibility. So we're going to show an example of communicating your intranet brand. This is by LPK. And LPK is an international design agency. So they created a murder mystery plot. And what they wanted to do was break away from their old intranet and communicate what this new internal brand looked like. And I think they show here LPK Wiki, which was their old intranet. They said he had expired in a displeasing manner. You may have seen the remains of our expired wiki, and if you pass through, it's an active crime scene. And they also provided a link, and I'm actually just going to close the presentation here and show you the video because it's very well done. So I just need to switch over my sound here, so it's going to go silent for about 20 seconds while we're setting this up.
Somebody killed the wiki. Why? No one even used it. Exactly. We've got the clues. We just need to put it together. Who's supposed to replace the wiki? His name is Watson. What do you have for me, Watson?
I have names, photographs, extension numbers, even their hobbies.
That's a start.
While you're researching, I can also handle your time sheets.
Thanks, Watson. Who would post a Happy Days lunchbox on an electronic bulletin board?
This is getting strange.
I'm gonna have to go remote on this one, Watson.
That's fine. You can access me on your smartphone at any time, anywhere.
Whoever we're dealing with, they obviously have their habits.
Don't we all?
You know, Watson, the truth is, I'm not gonna miss the wiki. Not one bit.
I don't think anyone will, sir.
Great. So that's probably the best launch video that we've ever seen. And I think it's the idea too, just
1 second here, just switching the sound back. Everyone is good. Chris, you can hear me?
Yep, you're back on headset.
Great. And let me just get the presentation set up here again.
Hey, just to mention, a lot of people are sending in questions asking, can I get the slides? Will this be available? We record every webinar, and we'll be sending out the link to the webinar within 48 hours. It'll be available also on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/ThoughtFarmer. And if you would like the link to this video here, you can just Google Intranet launch videos, and that'll bring you to one of our blog posts. That includes a link to this one and several others.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Chris. Okay, so moving forward, just like what LPK had done with breaking away from the old intranet, Central One also wanted to say goodbye to their old intranet, which was My Central One. And what they had done is written a resignation letter, and I think they kept with the whole spirit and the personas like they do, and said, it's with mixed feelings that I must share. This is my last day at Central One. And then they got the new intranet. They welcomed them like a new employee. Sorry, I'm just getting a little bit of static. I don't know if you guys are getting that as well.
It sounded good to us so far.
Okay, great. Must just be me. So so here's the announcement that they did for Beacon's first day. And how they took this even one step further is when they did an intranet survey on their new intranet, they called it would you like to do a performance review of Beacon? Another way that intranets can celebrate a new launch and communicate the brand is, this one's a little bit funny, they did a birth announcement. So this is from Fokker, and Fokker is an aircraft manufacturer in the Netherlands. Their intranet was named Mark, and Mark they liked because it was, again, a persona. Also, it talks about making your mark. And it's a little bit of a play on an industry-specific term. So Mark refers to different versions of aircraft. So Mark 1 is the first version, and it moves on, etc. Mark 2, Mark 3. So what I like about this example, so first you'll notice that, it's using word art and it's pretty homegrown. But I like that in some ways. With internal things, employees kind of take a badge and pride in doing something which is organic and that everybody's, it allows everyone to participate. And so it's okay. I know as a marketing person, sometimes you want things to look perfect, but it's okay to let people explore and collaborate and have fun. And I also like this one. They did, to add on to a birth announcement, they have this little Dutch tradition where when people are born, they have toast with sprinkles. Caroline, our client service manager, is actually Dutch, so I won't try to embarrass myself and pronounce what the little toasts with sprinkles are called, but I have a photo here for you. So they actually did an announcement, like it was a real birth announcement, and they had a party, and they ate these these biscuits that you would have when people are born. And just the last idea for communicating your intranet brand. Sometimes you have a lot of stuff online, but it's great to have an offline component as well. So our client, Penn State, put together little welcome kit books that actually explained what the intranet brand was. And that was something physical and something that helped, make that connection to the intranet brand even before people had grown to the comfort level of using it. And you saw all the great examples of swag from Central One as well. Great. So at this point, you now have an intranet brand. You have your culture values, and it's live, and it's created, it's implemented. Whew. Just kidding. Now the real work begins. So keeping your culture alive on your intranet requires ongoing engagement and planning. And here's a couple examples from our clients about how they kept the brand alive. So we already talked about LPK. I just showed you the video from LPK. So this is what their standard intranet looks like, but they actually switch up the visuals when they have special events. Here is what they did for Earth Day. So they turned their whole intranet green, and it's a way of keeping the brand really fresh and alive. Another way to carry the brand throughout is to integrate it throughout your content. So as intranet administrators, you have control over what the header looks like, over some of the design elements on the intranet, but an intranet is really only as good as its content. And what Splio did, who is a French company, they're amazing at design. They did all the design on their intranet. They do marketing software normally. And so what they did is they created a lot of different like little icons that people could use in news articles, and they made it easy for people to add those and kind of incorporate the brand throughout the content. You can see here's another example of their local groups, and they chose to have, you see if I switch back and forth between them, different headers for their different subsections of their intranet. And you see how even for the links that they have to the sub pages within this section, that those are incorporated into the brand as well. So now, this is our bonus. So since we were talking about integrating the brand into your content, that's a perfect segue into our new feature, which is easy image cropping. And I'm just going to do, we're a little short on time, so I'm just going to do a really quick demo. If you would like to learn more about ThoughtFarmer 7.1, jalapeno, which is called, we called it that because you can spice up your intranet. If you go to our blog, there is a blog post that just came out on Tuesday this week. And most of you should have also received an email just announcing what our the other changes are in ThoughtFarmer 7.1. But let me just take you and show you the image cropper really quick here. So this is, again, this is our own intranet here at ThoughtFarmer. And I'm just going to call your attention. We had a post here about Movember. I actually just, this was one we posted a couple weeks ago, but I just moved it up to the top here for our demo. But you see, for the Pinterest style layout that we have on our intranet, it takes pictures and it makes them really kind of wide and also not very tall. So unfortunately, when you're adding a lot of images normally, and you probably experience this as well, I do a lot of our posts on social media. So this is always a frustrating thing where you have this beautiful image and then it needs to display it in about 10 different formats across social media or across your intranet, and it cuts it into a really weird, awkward looking picture where it cuts everybody's heads off. So what we did to fix this issue and try to make it easy for everybody to make content and have great looking images is add an image cropper. So let me just show you how we can fix up this image really quickly. So here I am in my post. And if I just go to edit the post here, so you guys will notice there's a new little featured image section over here. And it'll show you two different views. So landscape is how it's going to view on my Pinterest style, or if you're using the carousel style. And square is how it's going to view if you use a thumbnail layout, or if you're using the traditional new style layout. So if I want to, I can either go and replace the image for something else, or I can click into it. And all I want to do here is make it so we can see everybody's faces. So this was our Movember picture from last year, by the way. We did a fun old-timey photo. So great, I now have everybody's faces. And then maybe I want to change it just in case it shows up in any news feeds elsewhere. So I can change this one as well. Can't get everybody's faces in, so I can also choose, maybe I'll just zoom in to show some interest on the two. This is our VP Gord, by the way, if any of you guys have heard Gord speak before. It's a really hilarious photo, I think. So there we go. I've got my two images cropped. Simply save the post. And let me just go back to our homepage here. So now you'll see we have everybody's faces. So easy, simple, and done. So let me just bring up my presentation again here. And so just to recap today, summarize what we talked about, and then we'll get into questions. So the 5 keys to developing your intranet brand. Number 1 is start by defining culture. Number 2, name your intranet. Number 3, go forth and design. Number 4, communicate your brand. And then finally, number 5 is live the values. So just to wrap up, we'll start taking any questions. And I just have a page here with some other resources that we have available on our website that might be useful to you. Particularly related to branding is social intranets and employee engagement, which is a white paper we have available on our intranet. So with that, we can go ahead and start taking questions, Chris.
So go ahead and type your questions into the GoToMeeting control panel. Anything you'd like to know. Like we mentioned, this was recorded, and sometimes it takes us a couple of days if we have processing errors. So within 48 hours, we'll have this up on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ThoughtFarmer, and we'll send you out a link to it. So one question we have here is, how much does ThoughtFarmer cost? Well, you can find that out if you go to our website. Under the product tab, there's a pricing section, and it's all laid out there for you. And another question, is ThoughtFarmer available in the cloud? Well, you'll notice in that pricing section, actually, on the website, you go to thoughtfarmer.com, click product, and go to pricing. There's both a cloud and a self-hosted version, so you can have it on your servers yourself, or we take care of the hosting for you in the cloud version, and you just pay a monthly rental. So go ahead there and type any other questions you have into the panel. Regina asks, you mentioned a blog post on naming your intranet. Can you share that link? Maybe
Yeah.
you can just pull up a browser there, Jill.
Sure. Yeah. Why don't I bring that up right now? I'll just show you guys. Oh, here's my last slide. Let me just bring up our website here. There's actually two I'll draw your attention to. So if you're at our website, there's two easy ways to find content. Intranets 101 is a great place if you're just starting with building an intranet. And I believe the naming one is actually, oh, I am not telling you the truth. One moment here. What to name your intranet. There we go. So we have a couple ones here. So 25 creative intranet launch ideas. We also have crowdsourcing the name for a new social intranet. That was the Oxfam intranet that we talked about, and that's the example from Oxfam. It's actually written by their former intranet manager. And then we also have what to name your new intranet. So we have 3 different blogs that I would recommend taking a peek at there that have further ideas. So.
Oh, we've got a question here from James. Is naming your intranet crucial? Could your intranet just be called the intranet? Well, sure it could, but that's just so boring. Hey, Jill, could you click through to that blog post there, what to name your new intranet?
Sure.
One of the things we found about naming an intranet is it gives your intranet personality. And the name can sometimes embody the culture. Here's a few names from this blog post from a few of our different clients. Spike at the Guardian newspaper in London, and a spike refers to the way I think I don't know if we have anybody from Guardian on the line, but when you each day the newspaper is spiked to the wall, it's some sort of press term. Anyway. Orange, you showed that. The Tube, IDEO's Intranet, Hour.Outreach, you showed that, Jill. The AMP, Scrum at Myriad Mobile, Scrum, a little bit of a rugby reference there where everybody comes together and tries to accomplish a goal. Mondo is the name of the Intranet of Mountain Equipment Co-op. Mondo, one of the unique things about that name is it works in both English and French, because they're a bilingual organization, but it means the same thing in both languages, and it gets across the idea of big. So it's not absolutely crucial. Intranet is a default name, but it gives your intranet personality, and you'll find it'll change the nature of some of the stuff that's done and shared on the intranet.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. And yeah, we actually, when I was preparing the examples with our client services manager as well, she said she found naming your intranet and spending some time with doing that tends to be one of the things that we see on more successful intranets. So ones that are employees find engaging and that are really active. She thought that was kind of clients who do intranets well also have a name.
We've got another question about the KJ exercise questions. Rob asks, do you have a list of questions? And do you want to answer that, Jill, or do you want me to?
Sure. I have the list of 2 questions that we created for when we were doing this. We can share. Chris and I have been meaning to put together a blog post on doing KJ exercises, so look forward to that coming in the next couple of weeks. I think what you want to think about more is, what are you trying to get out of the session? What are your goals? And then how can you phrase that in a way that is going to get everybody to participate and to talk and to tell stories? So it's not necessarily following a list of questions as much as thinking about what's going to work within your company and how you can generate stories and examples.
If you do a Google search for KJ technique, there's a great article by, I think they're uie.com. They're maybe UEI. Jared Spool. It's a great article on how to run a KJ, but the important thing actually is a question. It's not necessarily a series of questions, but one focus question that serves as the focal point for everybody's brainstorming. So for example, if you are helping a group to try to determine what are the business objectives for this new intranet, you might use the focus question, what are the strategic possibilities for the intranet? And that's your focus question. That's what everybody brainstorms around. What are the strategic possibilities for the intranet? Now, you might have some other notes to kind of coach them on, but that would be the big one that's written up on the board. And so it's one question, a question that serves to anchor the whole discussion.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Any other questions that we had come through?
I don't see any more. I think that's it. This is your last chance to punch a question in before we sign off. Well, Jill, I think that was I sure enjoyed that webinar, seeing all the examples of how people are using intranets and also the tips on branding and culture. So thanks so much for sharing that. We try to have a webinar every month. We won't do one too close to Christmas in December, but we're trying to arrange one right now for the near the beginning of December, and we'll send out a blast to the list and to everybody who attended this webinar to let you know. And look for an email with a link to this recorded presentation if you want to send it to your colleagues, or if you need to view a specific portion of that within 48 hours. And I don't see any more questions, so thanks everybody for joining us today.
Fantastic.
And we will see you online. Thanks, Jill.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.